Tony Popovic has announced his first Socceroos squad as head coach of the Australian men's national team. These are for the games against China, of course, being played in Adelaide and away to Japan. It's a little bit of a bigger squad than we're used to, 26 players instead of 23. And Christian, headlined by Massimo Luongo coming back out of international retirement. We kind of thought it wasn't really a full international retirement when he made it. We know the circumstances around that. Going into the Asian Cup, he had a lot of importance on his club at that point, with Ipswich trying to push for promotion in the Premier League. He achieved that goal. He is now a Premier League midfielder. He made himself available. Popper said in the press conference that people at Football Australia, not him specifically, and I'm sure this was the same with Langrak as well, spoke to Luongo. He made himself available, and Popper picked him, and Mass is back.
Yeah, and I think a question was asked to Popovic in his first interview in that press conference a week or so ago, and he said, if these players want to come out of retirement, they've got to come to me and say, okay, this is what I want. I want to come and play for Australia again. And that's surely the conversation that Luongo and Popovic had. And of course, seems like Popper's more than happy to bring him on board again, because I still think there's an integral part in this squad for Luongo to make a real impact. You mentioned Ipswich Town got that promotion last season. And I think the first game of the season they played Liverpool, and Luongo, I think, was the standout for Ipswich. He got, in terms of for their team, got man of the match. So he's had a decent season so far, about 32 years of age. He's still got a bit left in the tank, knows the environment well, knows his surroundings, knows his teammates. And I think this is, a really good piece for Popper just to build around, I think.
And there's been so much criticism of, the Australian midfield and how it's played. We get a couple players back into the team that we've been crying out desperately for. Riley McGree and Aiden Hrustic both returned from injury, so in that kind of creative midfield buzz phrase kind of role, we have two players in there. We didn't quite get all three of our wishes from the genie. Alex Robertson still not included, despite now being full fit and playing 90 minutes for Cardiff as well. So there's more kind of attacking, creative options in midfield. You plug in Mass Luongo as well, who can play in a kind of holding or box-to-box role. It seems to be that we're going to see a pretty big shake-up of that Socceroos midfield.
Yeah, with the selections now, there's definitely, we got what we wanted with Hrustic and McGree coming back from injury, and Hrustic, not having played much for the last window. So, no, a few problems are addressed there, for sure. There's the shape of that midfield does look a lot more promising and does directly answer a lot of the issues and criticisms we had with the past couple games. With Robertson, it's a tough one. So Christian alluded to it before with Popper saying at the start of his presser, well, he said it today as well, that he's not going to sell the idea of the Socceroos to anybody. And none of the journalists at the presser really questioned it or followed it up, but it does seem like he's speaking about Alex Robertson as well as, Langrak and his conversations with Luongo as well. So that's the only kind of way that Alex doesn't get in this team, because there's space for him there. He's recalled a couple. It's hard to say. I don't want to be too critical, but Metcalf and O'Neill, they've looked all right, but they haven't really offered enough. And there's other players that are hard done by to not come in, especially Nisbet drops out. Ballard doesn't get a look in as well, who they've played so well together. I think they could have addressed a lot of the issues themselves as well. But no, as we said, good to have Hrustic and McGree back in for sure. And that does look to answer a lot of the problems we've had.
So we're going to get to have this conversation all over again when we see the first 11 that's picked for the China game, because that's going to be very telling as well. But there is some interesting names that have popped up on this team list as well. There is a big Melbourne Victory flavour about this, Christian. 4 players that played in the grand final for Victory last year, and then you plus Popovic as well as the coach. 3 of them still current players. So you've got Paul Izzo in goals. Then you've got Jason Guerrier and Daniel Arzani, who we flagged on Tuesday's episode of the podcast as potentially players that are really well known by Popovic and could slot in and be those kind of players that could come in and make an immediate impact, and an impact that Popovic was familiar with. A name that, to be honest, came out of nowhere for me. I know he's had a good cup run to start his preseason, Nishan Velupillay. I think that is pretty surprising to come straight into a Socceroos call-up. As I say, he did have a good cup run. I think he's equal top scorer for the competition, at least in the national stages. But I do have my worries about him. He had a good cup run last season as well, and then he got into the league and he fell kind of flat with his form. So he's a player that I guess has been playing well now. We have some injuries out on the wing. Martin Boyle isn't selected. He's hurt his wrist as well, so perhaps some cover that in that area. But, a big Melbourne victory impact on this first squad from Popper.
And it's a 26-man squad as well, so that doesn't mean necessarily that Valuble is going to play a large part in these qualifiers. Maybe for a bit of depth, if he chooses to bring someone off the bench, maybe Valuble might be one of those options for Popper. But yeah, in terms of the victory flavour, it's not so surprising because only a few months ago, obviously Popovic coached the victory for a couple of seasons. So if you take into the circumstance that is, with the Socceroos' poor start with only 1 point out of 6 to start it, obviously Popper will want to, build around early or what he already knows. So bring in these victory players. They know his system. They know how he wants to play. So at least it just buys him a bit of time instead of, bringing in a whole new set of players per se. At least he's got that understanding with his players. So people may not agree with a couple of selections like Valuble, for example, but at the same time, I think Popper knows that he can trust these players because he's worked with them for a couple of seasons now. So from that aspect, it's not all surprising. And even Daniel Ozani, I thought he deserved a bit more of a go when Graham Arnold was there. Obviously, the controversy that's happened around him the past few days, that could also be viewed as a bit of a shock. But I don't think too much should be taken into that. I think, over the past few months, Ozani definitely does deserve to be in a 26-man squad for the Socceroos. There's no doubt in my mind. And then Jason Guerrier as well at right back. I think, although I'm not the biggest fan, I can see, to your point, Lockie, you've raised it over the week, that you could see him fitting in that right back spot because we just don't have enough cover there. And Popper needs to sort out a couple of options that he feels as though could get the best out of that position.
Yeah, I do think Guerrier is a very good choice, given how much in and out and number of players that the Socceroos have tried to fill in that right back slot. Guerrier is a very consistent player for Melbourne Victory, and we know that he slipped up in the final, but he's been a good player for a decent amount of time. And again, Popovic knows him and knows what he can get out of him. So I wouldn't be surprised if he goes straight in and starts both of these games. Well, a criticism of this squad, and this is literally a criticism that is made for pretty much every national team in the world, is that, the coach has picked his favourites. And to a certain extent, as long as that doesn't come at the trade-off of a drop in quality of the players, surely that's what a coach is expected to do, because they're familiar with the players and they know what they can get out of them, and they've, seen firsthand what they can do.
Yeah, it's you got to say it looks bad optics wise, especially Valuble is the one that threw us. I think if we see the other three victory players there, nobody's really questioning that. I think Gary is just a solid pick as Christian got into. If only they're calamitous appearances for in these next couple of games, then it will be brought under more scrutiny. But yeah, it just looks bad. But I don't think what's he supposed to do? Not pick players that he's coached ever. You can't just rule out a strong team and players that have deserved a call up. And as you said, Lockie, Gary's been super consistent the whole time. He's just like a 7.5 out of 10 player for most of his career, right? I can't remember many shockers he's had. I think these players will be able to step up and show what they've got in these next games. And I think then the criticism does go away for sure. The only thing is that, maybe there's some anti-Mariners grand final bias there with Ballard. I didn't want to, it goes the other way. But no, for real. There's a solid choices. And at Valuble, who else do you pick as a winger right now who's been playing? There's really no other options. Grand Qual's out injured. He would be the other shout that's playing in Europe if he was playing, but he hasn't been. There's not many other wide players. And his fifth choice, right? There's Irankunda. Goodwin will likely start. Then Silvera, Arzani coming off the bench. His fifth choice out of those. It's just, you're there for a body on the bench, really, and a good experience, right? So, no, there's nothing wrong with these picks.
And it's a 26 player as well, so he might not even be the body on the bench. He might be the body in the stands, which is the reality. Popper said that he wanted to bring in a few more players to get a look at him. The one player that would be a direct comparison is Owen Mabil, who appears has just been left out on a selection basis. We know Chakati and Boyle injured. Cassini Yengi also unavailable due to injury, which is unfortunate. So what many people perceive to be our number one striker is out. So no Adam Taggart either, left out on selection. So we come in with Mitch Duke, who's been coming off the bench for Makita Zelvia, who currently is sitting in the top of J1 at the moment. And then Apostolos Stomatolopoulos, who's returned from injury as well. So Christian, it seems a two up top, like we saw a little bit from Arnie in recent times, would be unlikely because we only have two number nines. So kind of that 4-3-3 that we know, very familiar for Popovic, two holding midfielders. Someone probably up forward playing in a right half space. We know Geordie Boss is back from injury as well. Popovic is very familiar with his brother, Casey Boss. They're very familiar, very similar players as well. So potentially we're going to see that left back bombing up the left, the winger cutting inside, and we have that front five there, you know, with like that Mashash kind of, I don't know, Riley McGree, someone playing in that kind of hole. So only two number nines.
Yeah, I think that's the way Popper might go about it. It could be, you know, a 4-3-3 that turns into a 4-2-3-1. I think Popper's been very adaptable over his time in recent years, both Victory, the Wanderers, wherever he's been, he can adapt to game situations. I think one of the negatives around his coaching style has been the actual changes he's made during the game. So, for example, the last 15 to 20 minutes, if his teams are 1-0 up, for example, and sometimes he hasn't made the right choices on occasion, and that could be his one downfall. But in terms of his selection from the get-go, I think, yeah, probably a 4-3-3, even, you know, the two up top as well, to start, because although there isn't, I don't want to say there's not enough depth in that position, but in terms of can Popovic trust these players? Because Popper needs results, right? So he's going to go with his tactics and formations that's going to get, I guess, the best out of this group, right? You can say, okay, he's got in his favourites from the Victory, but he's going to play his best team that he feels as though he's going to win these next two games, regardless if it's away to Japan or at home to China. So interesting from that front to see how he goes about it. But yeah, a few players there that might be with a sniff to get a surprise start. Who knows?
But when you say he's adaptable, though, you mean to like the squad that he's presented at a given club, right? Because we've seen like throughout a season and throughout a game, the game plan hasn't really changed, but maybe between different clubs and different player squads, that's when he's able to find a system that suits that team.
Yeah, in a way. I'm talking more as well, like I said, if it's in the dying stages, for example, and he needs to, I guess, change it up slightly, his system, that's where he can become unstuck at times. You know, we saw in the grand final where I think he brought on Jake Brimmer, and that sort of completely disrupted the Victory midfield. And then Mariners scored the equaliser, went to extra time, and Victory just never found their feet again. So that's like one of the very few criticisms I have about Popper's coaching. Can he get it right, you know, midway through a game, if it's in his favour or if it's against him? If he needs to chase the game, what's he going to do about it? How is he going to change it? How is he going to approach it? So yeah, from that aspect, it's going to be intriguing. Has he learned from his past mistakes? How will he go about his business?
Yeah, so the last couple of players left out just on a selection basis. Will, as you said, Josh Nisbet no longer in the team. I do think Max Ballard probably can consider himself a little bit unlucky in a 26-man squad. He's been playing regular minutes over in the Eredivisie. And then Cam Devlin as well, who appeared, he hasn't been a regular, but appeared in the last squad, misses out as well.
Yeah, as you said, Cam Devlin, he offers pretty similar stuff to a lot of the players that are in the squad. So, I mean, a lot of their roles are defined. I think Ballard maybe was a bit more interesting, like a little bit more versatile in there, and offers a little bit of a different dynamic. But as you said, you know, Stensness in there as well as this pick can cover in midfield. He has played in midfield before. You know, players will just have to keep working hard. And Popper did mention in his presser that the squad can look entirely different in the next windows going forward as well. So this is, I mean, you can't take too much out of this. I don't think. I think it's just, you know, a short turnaround from his appointment to now, and he's done what he's had to do, and filled the gaps that he's had to with his Victory favourites. But then, yeah, I think we'll see this squad continually being shaken up over the next windows.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. We're going to have a lot of fun talking about the starting 11s that come out, I'm sure, as well. If you do want to hear that conversation, subscribe to the YouTube channel. We're going to be doing a live watch along for both of the Socceroos games, so subscribe and stay tuned for that. But until then, let us know what you think about this Socceroos squad, who got in that maybe shouldn't have, who do you think missed out, and we'll see you next Thursday night for the Socceroos against China over in Adelaide. See you later.